Hey everybody, it's Kelly. Welcome back to another episode of Ask a Therapist. Today we're addressing even more myths about bisexuality. I don't know how it's 2024 and we are still having to address myths about bisexuality and misunderstandings about it in general, but it is, and we are. So here we go. Myth number one, people who are bisexual are more likely to cheat. Why? Why is that an assumption? The understanding that someone who is bi can only be satisfied by one partner is at basis, a misunderstanding about what it means to be bisexual. If someone is bisexual, it means they have the ability, the option, the propensity to possibly be attracted to anybody out there. It doesn't mean they're always attracted to anyone who walks in front of them. Therefore, that doesn't mean they're any more likely, or to be fair, less likely to cheat than anyone else out there. If someone is going outside of the rules of the relationship that they are in, they are going outside the rules of the relationship they are in because of something happening in themselves, not because of who they're attracted to. That's not about the other person. This myth is so bizarre to me because it goes again on the assumption that it has something to do with the other person. If someone is breaking the rules of their relationship, it actually has nothing to do with the other person. And the fact that in, again, 2024, we're still blaming the other person for what the person who's in the relationship is doing is so bizarre and antiquated. To take this super stereotypically and go way, way, way back to all of the stereotypes, you've got a man and a woman in a married relationship and the man cheats on the woman with another woman. We blame the woman he cheated with for being a homewrecker. And if we go with all of the assumptions where the woman knew that he was married and knew that the wife didn't know and all of those things, even then, she is not more to blame than the husband who stepped out on his wife outside of the rules of their relationship. When someone is in a relationship and there are rules to that relationship, they should abide by those rules. And if you can't, you should leave the relationship or ask your partner to change the rules. That's okay too. And if your partner won't, then you should leave the relationship. Go do something else. If the rules of your relationship don't work for you anymore, either leave or suggest a rule change. It's not hard. If someone blames their sexual identity for them going outside of the rules of their relationship, that's an unfair thing to do. If you are a bisexual person and you are in a monogamous relationship and you find that doesn't work for you, maybe you're not monogamous. That's also possible. But then don't be in a monogamous relationship or talk to your partner about whether or not you're monogamous. Figure that out for yourself. There are a lot of people out there who are just discovering an aspect of themselves and they're just discovering maybe that they're bisexual and they always thought they were straight. And within the confines of their straight relationship, they always thought that they were straight and monogamous they may be discovering those parts of themselves. That is between them and their partner to figure out what the new rules are and what that looks like. Do I think that should probably be done with a professional? Yeah, I kind of do. Because sometimes the way that happens can be really hard to navigate and there's a lot of emotions involved. Having somebody who is outside the situation might be a good idea. Either way, the way that those rules are changed and addressed are for the people in that relationship to decide. Again, that's not because the person is bisexual. It's because the person is changing and discovering something about themselves and therefore the rules of the relationship have to change. That doesn't mean that because the person's bisexual, they're going to cheat. When people say this, it's because they assume that someone who is bi can't be satisfied in one relationship. That's not bi, that's polyamory. Ethical non-monogamy is something that can be a very beautiful thing if all parties involved are aware of what that means for them. If all parties are involved in making it ethical and making it something that all parties involved are fully consenting and fully aware of what's happening and fully on board. That's a wonderful thing. If you're a monogamous person, that might not be your thing. But ethical non-monogamy is not cheating because those relationships have those conversations and those relationships do not expect monogamy. That's why there's non-monogamy in that. See? That goes on to our second one, which is that all bisexual people are polyamorous. Also not true. Does there tend to be a larger number of pansexual and bisexual people who were also polyamorous? I don't know that I could answer that. I've never actually seen numbers on that. Maybe. That's very possible. I don't know that that's necessarily causational in any way. I also don't know why that matters. The idea that someone needs to have these different abilities to be attracted, satisfied at all times, you're talking about two different things. Just because someone has the ability, the possibility of being attracted to anyone regardless of their gender, does not mean they also want to be with multiple partners at the same time. It doesn't mean that they have multiple different needs to be met by multiple different partners. Okay? Are you following me here? Those aren't the same thing. You can also be polyamorous and not be bisexual. That's also an option. These different labels are so much deeper and so much richer than this two-dimensional understanding that we're giving it when we put these all or nothing statements on it. And it becomes so simplified and honestly so sexualized when we put this all bisexual people are polyamorous or all bisexual people are going to cheat thing out there. When I hear people say things like these first two, I want to know what their story is and how they came to that conclusion. Did something happen in their lives that makes them say that? And if so, what were the circumstances that led them to conclude that? What else was going on for them and for their partner? How well did everyone in the relationship know themselves and know each other? What went down that led to those different realizations? Like, what happened? It's just not that simple that just because someone is bi, they cheated, or just because someone is bi, they're also polyamorous. That's not how that works. Number 3, bisexuality is a stopover. I want to talk to people who are under the bisexual or pansexual umbrella on this one, okay? Because first of all, when anyone who calls themselves bisexual or pansexual uses this statement, it's so frustrating to me. When a woman initially comes out and understands herself to be bi, and then maybe a couple of years later, she has more experience dating women and more experience dating men and realizes about herself that no, in fact, she is a lesbian. Or a man comes out and realizes that he is bi, and a couple of years later, he's in a different season of his life and he now uses the label of being gay. How did that negate the bisexuality? How did that negate it? It doesn't mean that at that period of time, that label didn't actually fit them. I can understand as someone who has lifelong, so far anyway, had the label of bisexual. I can understand why that would be frustrating because it can feel sometimes like it maybe lessens the validity of the label at first glance. I get that because for some people to not keep the label forever, it negates that. But also, some people don't keep the label of straight forever. Does that negate the label of straight? It kind of doesn't. So here's the thing. We only know what we know about ourselves until we know other things about ourselves. And when we learn different things about ourselves, it doesn't negate what we knew before. The amount of self-understanding that it takes to shift what we know about ourselves and how we present ourselves to the world is deep and sometimes painful and involved. And anyone in the queer community to begrudge that process from anyone else in the queer community is frankly offensive. To look at someone and say that their process was not authentic because it doesn't match your process is unfair. Now, talking to anybody who does not accept the bisexual or pansexual label and either at one point did and then accepts a different label or never did and doesn't necessarily understand the label. It is not for you to decide just because you at one point accepted the label and now do not, that person is going to at some point too. For those elder gays who at one point accepted the label and now do not look at people younger than you and say, oh, don't worry, I had my bi phase too. That's also offensive. Don't say that to people. Do not dismiss someone's process because it doesn't look like yours. Or don't assume that everyone's process is going to look like yours. I understand people say it as a joke, but not all jokes are funny. And we live in a time where people are trying to legislate us out of existence, where people are trying to make it harder for queer people to exist. How about we stop making those jokes? How about we just stop? Number 4, men can't be bi. What is that? I don't even actually know where this one comes from, to be completely honest. And maybe that's because I have never been a man. But I hear this one a lot.
You're either gay or you're not.
That's just not true. It's just flat out not true. No discussion, nothing else there. It's not true. Men can be bi, women can be bi, non-binary people can be bi. Bottom line, humans can be bi. Accept people when they tell you who they are. Believe people when they tell you who they are. People know who they are better than you do. Bottom line. Number 5, people who are bi have it easier because it's easier for them to pass. This is connected to something that gets said almost every time I put a video out about bisexuality. It gets said actually kind of constantly. And honestly, the way that it's phrased says more about the person who's perpetrating the myth than the person they're saying it about. But almost always there's some sort of a comment on one of these videos that people who are bi shouldn't be upset because they can pass for, and the word normal is typically used, they can pass for normal and things are not as hard for them. Within marginalized communities, when we start comparing how hard things are for each other, all that does is decrease the power that we have when we band together and fight for equality for all of us. Objectively, there are obviously marginalized people within the queer community that are more in danger than others. And also, none of us are safe until we're all safe. So when we're tempted to say things like that, when you're tempted to make a statement like, you should be happy that you can pass as normal, or you should be happy that you have a choice to act straight, I think one of the things that needs to happen for everybody at this point is to have a think about what's prompting you to say something like that. Like, what's happening for you that's prompting you to say something like that? Is it, are you hurting? Like, is there something really hurting inside of you because you have something that you want that you can't have right then? And if you have something that you want that you can't have right then, what do you need? Like, support wise from the community, what do you need? Share that need. Like, hey, I need support in this area. I'm really hurting in this area. Because honestly, the community we're building here on this channel, like in this little corner, is gonna respond pretty well to a need, much better than they're gonna respond to an attack of like,
suck it up, buttercup, you have it easier than I do.
I say that number 1 because I really believe in this community, and I say that number 2 because I genuinely think that the vast majority of things that we even get said on here that are like negative or even tongue-in-cheek sometimes are coming from people who are actually like hurting inside, because the world is ugly right now for people in the LGBTQIA plus community. Like, it's ugly. And if we were to use this place to support each other and to realize that we're not alone, how much stronger we could like walk away from this and maybe take that strength into our own lives and strengthen things there. Because as long as marginalized communities stay marginalized, as long as they stay fighting, and as long as they stay divided, there's not a lot of power in that, right? But I just wonder how much more healing our time would be if we were to do some of that, I guess. That's it for today. Thank you so much for being here. I will see you all next time. And until then, take care of yourselves and each other.